I tell myself it's going to be different every time. I'm not going to be triggered or overreact. Then, as soon as something goes wrong, I'm freaking out again. Why can't I stop this and have control over my emotions?
So that spot where things don't go the way that you had planned, and then you freak out and you can't handle the external thing happening. You can't handle this, anytime things don't go the way that you planned, right? And even though you're trying to, and you're doing the best that you can, and you have awareness that this happens. I remember this a lot where I would consciously have to, when I started to have awareness of some of the, I'm trying to think of how to answer this question, because you tell yourself it's going to be different every time, and it's not. So it's like you set yourself up not to fail, but it's a predetermined, things are going to be different this time. So you're already entering into whatever that thing is with some sense of anxiety and stress, which means your nervous system is activated, which means you don't have your full capacity online to make the best decisions, to see all the right choices, to be able to connect to your inner wisdom, and not you don't have your full capacity because you're in an activated state in those moments. And so we can boil the question down to, it's how do I navigate uncomfortable spaces when my nervous system is activated? That's a really good question, right? Because it's going to happen. The human experience is an activated, triggered experience. You're going to get external stimulus. You have to learn how to navigate that with your emotions and with your mental health and with all of these other kind of things, so that you can not hurt other people, so that you don't hurt yourself, so that you can actually improve your life and change these things. So when you look at it through the lens of your nervous system, how do I heal my nervous system? That's a really interesting question. That's when you can start getting really curious about what happens to you subconsciously. What is the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response? What is happening subconsciously within your body with those hormones, with those chemicals, everything that's taking place completely without any of your control. It's a completely subconscious process that's taking place. And when you start to bring awareness to it, and you start to localize your attention on it, you'll start to recognize when it's activated. You'll start to recognize this question is an anxiety-driven question, and you'll start to understand that you spend a lot of time in that state, in these certain circumstances, and a lot of time out of that activated state in these other circumstances and situations. And then all the coping mechanisms that you use to go back and forth between those states and dissociate and, distract. And it becomes, how do I just sit in discomfort and be okay? And are you okay knowing that you're going to be in discomfort, and that if something does go wrong, you'll be able to figure it out? Everything that has gone wrong before, you figured out and you got through. And it probably looked really messy. And that's okay, but you did it. And whatever happens next, the same thing will happen. You'll get through it. You'll figure it out in some way. And it might be really beautiful and clear, and you'll handle it beautifully. Or it might be incredibly messy and chaotic and stressful and hard. And you won't even understand it until you think about it 5 years later. And that's okay. But focus on healing your nervous system and slowing down and getting back into your body and recognizing what your nervous system is doing and what activates it and what you do to counteract it, what your coping mechanisms are, and allowing that awareness and that process to then shape and influence how you interact with your world and with your partner and with your children and with your family and friends and coworkers and the world around you. With the, everything, with everything.
With everything.
Yeah.
So good. That big macro scale of it, of just really going right for it in the nervous system and finding those things. The only thing that I would add to that is, I'm taking it smaller, so I'm going to go micro, is you tell yourself it's going to be different, but then it keeps happening. So it sounds like just from that, we find ourselves in reoccurring things. And a lot of times, like, how did you say it? Said it like being already in that anxious state. And so like, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to behave, but your body is like hearing all that. So all you're telling yourself is what you're not going to do for this really, really stressful situation. And just like one little thing that you can add, and this only goes, I think, for the time being, like everything about regulating your nervous system and working on that and figuring out your coping mechanisms. But for the things that you know you're walking into that are stressful, and these are where you have these reoccurring triggers that keep happening, and maybe you don't have the ability to not walk into those situations, right? That is something that is happening. This is going to happen, and you just tell yourself, I'm not going to behave that way. I'm not going to behave that way. I'm not going to behave that way. Again, like you're putting yourself in that anxious state. So it's just something to get curious on and to play around with. If it's something that you know is going to be something that you know is going to be a trigger, and something that you have a history of responding to, instead of telling yourself what you're not going to do, when you're in a calm state, not in that environment, practice what you are going to do. Practice what's going to happen when they say that thing to you, when that deadline comes up, when the ball goes through the window. I don't know. Like, I guess that doesn't happen every day unless you live by a golf course. But just like whatever that is, practice how you want to respond. And we usually don't know how we want to respond unless we're in a calm state. So when you're feeling activated, that's not the time. But in those in-betweens, in those like soft moments of where you are calm and not there, start to rehearse it. What you're going to do, how you're going to show up, how you're going to respond, and know that you might get it right the first time. Okay. Maybe not the second, but it's going to take practice. These patterns are ingrained and they have been there, and you've been practicing the reaction for quite a while. So give yourself time to get it wrong and keep practicing until you are able to really implement the way that you wanted to show up for those. And again, let me stress for all the control lovers in the world, that only works in situations where you know it's going to happen, when it's been a reoccurring theme, when it's a pattern that a lot of times is with a family member or boss, or just like the somebody that's in your close proximity frequently that you know is going to happen. But you can't like practice everything for life. So you have all of that's an anxious state. And that's not what Craig had mentioned about not being in that anxious state.
I got it. You ready?
I got it. Yeah. Yes, I'm ready. I meant to say.
Expect the best, plan for the greatest.
Oh, that's not what I thought you were going to say. Expect the best, plan for the greatest. Wow.
Right?
I love that so much.
Freaking life.
I got to write that down.
I wrote it down.
You wrote it down? Okay.